and welcome everyone to this week's Business Bytes. Once again, joined by business partner Andrea Anderson. Welcome,
Hey,
Andrea.
hey, wonderful to be here.
And we've got two expert panelists this week, Kari and Mitch. Kari, we're going to jump in with you to begin with. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business, please.
Hey, Peter, and hello, everybody. Andrea, thank you for the invite, both of you. It's great to be on. My name's Kari Sutton. I work with parents who want to raise resilient kids. So my business, I've been a teacher for the past 28 years, and I've really found in the past, most probably in the past 2 decades, I was also a guidance officer. And what I saw was the increasing amount of anxiety, depression, worry, all of the mental health problems coming through for our kids. So I've just started a consultancy or developed a consultancy and have just written my first book that's going to be published actually it's my second book, but written and it's published at the end of this year.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is great. So I've got twin boys who are 9 who are watching TV in the other room at school holidays at the moment. And they know unless there's an ambulance, fire or
That's
police.
Right. Unless there's lots of blood from one of your orifices, please don't come get me.
Pretty much. And they're pretty good, although they do like the limelight. So we've got to keep an eye on that. But so, yeah, what's happening with kids? I sent a text to a mate of mine yesterday. I said, oh, look, we had a great weekend. I got 4 hours of exercise into the boys because, kids today are soft. Because I think back to when I was a kid, totally different environment, but I'd spend all day outside. I guess I wasn't worried about skin cancer and all the rest of it. So what's been happening? Why are our kids less resilient, and what can we do about it?
I guess, and that's where I've come, and the study I've done, we looked at it, and we all have this thing. It's an itty bitty crappy or shitty committee that sits on our shoulder, and it's what we learn from when we're really little about and what we say to ourselves. And part of the problem that our kids have got these days is that itty bitty shitty committee is also fed by one of these things.
Yeah, right.
And the comparisons that they're making to others on the internet, on their phones, on social media. And I'm not saying social media is all bad. It's not. Social media is a tool. Mm-hmm. But what it's doing is enhancing people's levels of anxiety, enhancing their comparisonitis. And what they don't realize is that that's a slice in time. It's not that person's whole life. In fact, you're watching the highlight reels. Just like you go to and see at the movies, the highlight reels, and lots of stuff gets left on the floor in the editing room. We don't realize that that's what's happening, or young people don't realize that that's what's happening frequently. And so part of what I talk to families about, and I work with mainly primary school age children. I also work with teenagers, but mainly primary school age children. And we talk about how can we develop the habits of mind? So similarly to some of your other podcasts talking about entrepreneurial mindset and things, we can actually develop children and also our own positive mental health habits that we do every day. So they're intentional activities. And I say to parents, I'm not putting extra things on your plate. Please don't feel I'm going to pile more stuff on you. I know how busy parents are. I'm a parent. I also know how busy teachers are. So I work with educators in childcare centres, in schools. And what we talk about is frequently, what can we do within our day to catch them being in a positive frame of mind. And I guess for me, that's really important because it's not about doing more. It's actually just doing something intentionally.
Okay. And so if we start to recognize, well, it's just good mental health practice anyway. So can you sort of take us through some of the
things
steps
we do. We talk about, so it's often when you get up in the morning, and when our kids get up in the morning, how do we get up? Like, do we get up and go, oh, crap, another day? And sometimes we feel like that, and that is okay. And what I say to people, this is not about, please don't think it's about your kids being happy all the time or you being happy all the time. It's not. That's actually a disorder. It's called mania, and nobody wants that either. And I'm not making fun of mania, but it is when people say, oh, you want to be happy, clappy all the time. No, it's actually about being realistically positive and going, you know what, I know crap is going to happen, and some crap might happen today, but I also know that I've got a tool belt of skills and strategies and ideas that I could use. So if in the playground, one of my friends says, yeah, I don't want to play with you today, or you're a big fat loser, which kids can be quite nasty, how do I deal with that? How do we not internalize it? Because if you think of as an adult, the itty bitty shitty committee that sits on your shoulder, you often have other kids in that voice. So that's the voice of possibly parents, possibly teachers, and possibly other kids, and generally from when you are quite young. If you actually went back and went, where did that belief come from? It was possibly when you were really little or in the early childhood years, because in our early childhood years, we don't have a filter. So what we can do is getting kids going, you know what went well today? So at the dinner table or whenever you have that conversation, even if you're going to bed at night, reading stories, things like that, you actually have the conversation of what went well? What didn't go so well? What could we do differently? What are we grateful for? So it doesn't have to be really long. It can be 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's just getting them to focus on what went well, because frequently our society and news particularly always focuses on what is going wrong. What are the negatives in certain situations? And the reason they do that is because that's what sells. Positive news doesn't sell. It interestingly, and this has been fascinating for me to watch, positive news has got a much better rap during COVID. It's actually had much more airtime because everything else has been so overwhelming. It's almost like we've needed an antidote, whereas before it really didn't get a blip on the radar. So it's things like being grateful. How can we help them be more hope-filled about the future? And this is something I work with every parent I work with, because particularly at the moment, the next 10, 20 years is going to be a little more difficult than before pre-COVID times, let me tell you, with everything that's going to happen. So what we have to do is go, how can we structure our children so they have hope? What does that look like? So it may mean setting realistic goals. How can we help our kids do that and go, okay, if you want that, say if you wanted to get a new game or something like that, how can we break that down, and showing them and teaching them how to break those goals down? It's also looking at their strengths. And so I know I'm going through this really quickly, but one of the ideas we talk about is, and as a teacher, I really focused on this, looking for the positive in children. There will always, in all of us, we have strengths and we have weaknesses, but we function much more effectively and we are actually more psychologically healthy if we play to our strengths. So when I talk about that, what I'm looking at is saying, and I'm not saying disregard a weakness. If a weakness is going to sink a ship, then that needs to be addressed. So for example, in a business case or in business, if you had an intern or somebody coming in and they had a weakness in maths and they were in a position that they really needed that would have to be addressed. We can't just go, oh, focus on their strengths, focus on their strengths. But what I say to teachers particularly and parents is that often when our report cards come home, what we focus on is the area where the child got the F, and we'll go, you got to study harder. Whereas really, are they going to need that in future life? What will it look like? And what will it do to them if they have to keep pursuing something that they're really not very good at? Now, I'm not saying that they got that F just because that's not a strength. They may not have tried hard. They may have given up. Whatever it is, it's looking and saying, how can we focus on their strengths, address their weaknesses if they need to be, but really play to those and understand what they are? Because sometimes a parent may go, oh yeah, they're really good at this. But strengths have two things particularly in common. One, they're good at them, so that they learn them easily, they find them easy to do. But the second one is that it energizes people. So this goes for adults as well. If you are good at something, but it doesn't energize you, it is most probably a learned behavior that you have actually learned to do over and over again. It's like my husband. My husband will go out to social gatherings with me. He finds it really tedious and he gets really tired at the end. That's a learnt behavior of him actually interacting with other people because he's an introvert and would prefer not to do that. So when I talk to people, I say, look, understand your kids' strengths, start looking at that and how you can play to them. But also, and when we were talking about what areas do they need work at, we also talk about a growth mindset. And when we have, this is part of Carol Dweck's work, the growth mindset is not just, oh, I'm no good at maths. It's actually, you know what? I can get better if I want to. So for an example, I'm a small business. I don't particularly like Excel. And I had a very fixed mindset about that, which was, I'm not good at Excel, can't do Excel. My accountant said to me, Carrie, everything needs to be in Excel. Okay. So I actually had to flip the mindset and go, you know what? I'm not good at it yet. I am getting better. I am trying. And the more I use Excel, the more, and we talk about neurons that fire together, wire together. So every time I go into Excel, I go, you know what? Going to be a learning experience. I'm going to get better at something today. Not exactly sure what, but I'm going to get better. So I start clearing that path, because most of the things we do as adults are actual neural superhighways. They're habits that we've formed. We don't even think about them. And so what it is we immediately go, your husband says this, you respond this way. That's a neural superhighway. Or your child does this, presses your buttons, and that's how you respond. And when I was looking at Excel, when I opened Excel, I had a neural superhighway of how I responded, which was, no, I can't do it, and just threw my hands up. Fixed mindset didn't get me anywhere. The first time I opened up Excel, it was like slashing through the jungle with a machete, but it gets easier over time. And that's why I talk to parents about and say, you know, some of these things, whether it's optimism, looking at being more optimistic, understanding how we can focus on our kids' strengths, even a mindfulness practice. And sometimes, and I'll hold my glass of water up, but even in the morning, if you teach your child to have 5 minutes of mindfulness as they're either drinking a glass of water or as you're sitting having a cup of coffee, whatever it is, it actually centers them for the day, and it grounds them. Particularly at the moment, this is one of the things that I'm finding really, all the parents that I'm working with at the moment, high levels of anxiety, significant levels of anxiety. And it has been all year, because what's been going on is COVID has thrown us so many curveballs. Our anxiety as adults is up to here, and children will match what they see in their parents. And that's when more angst happens at home, more conflicts, particularly if people have to work at home and kids are home from school. So it's all of those sorts of things. And it's actually, and one of the key factors, I worked with a lot of schools up here in Queensland and also in other states, and said, you know, when you're doing the home learning, please, please, please make sure you let the parents know good enough really is good enough. They don't have to get through everything in a day. Because as teachers, we don't get through everything in a day either. We've got 30 kids sitting in front of us. We may get some of it done, but we may not get all of it done. And then we've got parents who are trying to make kids do something in an environment that they're not used to. Like, they're used to being at home, but nowhere near doing home learning or distance learning. And so what I've said to people is, you know, spend this time doing other things, connecting with our kids. One of the things that COVID has given us is time, and it's given us a lot of difficulties as well, but it's also given us time to step back and go, you know what? What's really important in my life? It's almost like a reset, where we're now saying, is it going to be, because this is a challenging time, what are we going to do to reset? How are we going to go forward? And holy mackerel, I didn't realize my child was struggling that much with this concept. And that's one of the things parents have been coming to me to say, Carrie, do I need to do extra? I said, you now know, and now you're more informed, and you've got that data to go back to a school with and say, look, maybe it was the way I was trying to explain it, because I don't explain things the way they're learned today. None of us do. When we went to school, it wasn't explained that way. But now you actually know, holy dooly, there are some missing gaps, or wow, I didn't realize how far extended they need to be. Because sometimes you may have a child at school going, oh, they talk too much or this. They're in fact bored. And right. So when you see it at home and you go, wow, they want to devour everything I give them. They get on the internet, they do all this research, they get their work done in this amount of time. That's the sort of stuff. And I guess I see this year has been a gift in a lot of ways as well to parents to understand their children more.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's fantastic advice so far. So much to unpack.
Yes.
I'm going to jump in. I was taking notes whilst I was looking down, so I'm not, No,
that's all right.
Checking my phone or anything like that. You mentioned, which I thought was interesting. I'm totally on board with absolutely everything you're saying. As I'm sure we all are. I just don't know how to do the mindfulness thing that you mentioned, like just taking some time to do mindfulness. So I'd be interested to start there, and then we'll just go.
Yeah, and we can unpack it. Mindfulness is one of the things that can be really tricky to fit in. And as I say to people, it doesn't have to be 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes a day. Even if it is, as you stand in the morning and have that first cup of coffee, if it's having a cup of coffee with, as an adult, having a cup of coffee, or while the water brews, just being present and breathing and focusing on breathing in through the nose, down past the heart, down into the belly, and then breathing out. So that's one way of doing it. It can even be, so it doesn't always, I really talk to people about saying, it's not always about the sitting in the transcendental meditation pose or whatever it is. It's actually going, how can we be more present? So if you eat mindfully, if you decided, today I'm going to go outside for lunch and I'm going to see how many colors I can see, and just be really present, or I'm going to really taste the sandwich or the lunch I'm eating and be really present for that. Children are actually fairly, even though it really depends, but they're fairly good at being in the present moment. And if you don't believe this, go for a walk with a 4-year-old, because they'll stop and look at the ants, they'll look at the bees, they'll find everything. So they're much more present. However, it is becoming more when they go to school, particularly, and in the COVID time, they are becoming more anxious. So one of the things I talk to parents about is if they are starting to get anxious, and a lot of what anxiety is the thoughts in our head, and then those thoughts make feelings in our bodies for children. So those thoughts cause them worry. The body starts racing and starts getting anxious, and they feel that. And then it starts going up into a full-blown anxiety attack. Before it gets to that peak, you can't do this at the peak because it actually won't, they're not processing up there. They actually just need you to be the calm if they're having an anxiety attack. So be there mindfully with them, talk to them about that. But before, and this is a part of the mindfulness, if you see them starting to get anxious or they're starting to articulate that they're worried about something, you can say, hey, I can hear you're worried, and I know that's a valid thing. So validate them first so they know you're there. But then say, can you find 3 things that you can see that are yellow? Can you tell me 4 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can touch, and 2 things you can hear? Or however many things. What it's doing is grounding them. And this actually helps stop the rising sea and rising a spiral of anxiety. So again, it's looking at what can we see, mindfully observing, what can we see, what can we hear, what can we smell. All of these things bring us back to the present moment. So whatever it is, it can, for adults, it could be mindfully taking a shower, and like being just for 2 minutes, mindfully taking a shower in the morning, or just being in the water and feeling the water on your body. These are the sorts of things. The reason I talk about mindfulness particularly is because our brains race at 1,000 miles an hour most of the day. We need to give our brains a break. And when we actually sit and are present, whether it's breathing and in through the nose, it can be in through the nose, out through the mouth, however you want to do it, just relax and calm the muscles. You can also do a muscle relaxation exercise where you tense everything and then release. Whatever it is, it's actually just giving our brain a break, because what we're doing is living, we call it living above the red line. And what's happening with children now, and you asked at the beginning, why are we seeing more and more children with anxiety, with lots of worries, depression, mental health problems, self-harm? There's a whole wide variety of reasons around that. But one of them is that we are so busy and we are living above the red line, and they don't know how to come down. And we have to teach them the skills to, come down below the red line. Because when we are above the red line, what that means is when we're, as adults, when we're above the red line, that's when cortisol and adrenaline are pumping through our bodies. Now that's fine if you've got a lion or a tiger chasing you, but when we are sitting in traffic, when we're sitting in a meeting and we're stressed, when we're doing other things and we're stressed, anxious, and pumping all these chemicals into our body, unless we can get rid of them, unless we can come back below that line, it's actually poisonous for our whole physiology. Those chemicals, if they continue to go round and round in our bodies, do damage to all of our organs. And that's what, when children go to school who are highly anxious, that's why I say to teachers, we need to teach them how to calm, because you're not going to teach anybody anything when they're in a highly anxious state.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So Yeah, it's really good advice. Lots of processing going on. With overall, I don't see in my space. I'm very fortunate. My kids are pretty relaxed. I'm pretty chilled out. I saw COVID as a great opportunity. I know there's lots of people struggling out there, but for me, I've been working on a book for years, and I went, oh great, I've actually got some time to do it. So, and Andrew will probably attest to this. I'm pretty chilled at the worst of times, and the boy's mother is as well. So I'm not seeing that, but you're seeing a lot of this, and obviously, I've got friends in Melbourne and things like that, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and everything's heightened. Where I am in northern New South Wales, it's a lot easier. But what sort of levels are we seeing out there for the listeners out there? Because if it's bad, it's bad. Yeah.
At least 1 in 7. So this is 1 in 7 with a diagnosed mental health disorder of Australians, of Australian young children. 5 at the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And this would be 2 years, the stats are 2 years old, so from the last census, and 560,000 young Australians are living with a diagnosed mental health condition.
Right. So they're basically peaking up over this red line more often than they know how to deal with it. And then that's creating some physiological problems. And then that's creating a whole set of other issues that they're trying to cope with it in a non-supportive way.
If you think of in your child's class, there's 28 to 30, there would be at least a quarter of those children that would be struggling with anxiety, depression, or possibly self-harm. So 1 in 4, and this because it's 1 in 7 that are actually diagnosed, 1 in 4 are most probably struggling and people actually haven't seen it. So it's not, it's not actually diagnosed. And what we're seeing, and the thing that concerned me the most and why I started the consultancy, and not that I think I can tackle it on my own, but was the rising level of child suicide. So between 5 and 17 years of age, in 2016, there was 95 young people who took their own lives. And in 2017, there was 98. And it's been rising ever since.
All right. And we'll put some links in the description below if anyone is struggling. There'll be some resources like, Kids Helpline and...
Kids Helpline is really important. And the thing that's worried me, Peter, particularly over the past 3 months, in July last year, so from July this year to July last year, and it was the same in May this year, whether it be because of COVID or the other things, the calls to Kids Helpline had gone up 25% in May and 29% in July.
Okay.
So kids are struggling and young people are struggling. And my concern again is looking and saying, we have, if you think of, and at the moment your kids are not in the upper years of school, but we have young people who need help now. Patrick McGorry's been talking about it. Other people in the headspace, Ian Hickey's been talking about it. We have to help these kids now because they're coming out of grade 12. A lot of the rites and rituals and passages haven't been there this year. And what's going on is they're hearing all this negativity around, is there going to be jobs for me? Are the universities actually going to be able to open because they've lost so much money? What's going to be happening for us in the future? Do we have to pay back all this debt that's helped keep these people? So all of these worries and anxieties, they're taking on and taking to heart. And that's where, please, if you can have those things listed, it would be fantastic.
I just want to ask a question if I can here, Carrie, because look, it's such a... we talk about, the pandemic being a health pandemic, but the reality is the fourth wave is probably going to be the worst one, which is the mental health pandemic, because it's impacting on everybody. And we know that for adults, let alone for young people, we know that for adults, there are a lot of psychologists who have already closed their doors and essentially can't take any new referrals. I've got a clinical psychologist that I work with where it's going to be 6 weeks from the point you turn up with a referral from the doctor to be able to even get your first appointment. So we know that there's you know, advertising's done incredibly well in making people aware of mental health and mental health issues and challenges. But of course, what's now happened is we've created this mass tsunami of people who are now needing help, and the help is not there. So we've really created a demand supply scenario. So from your perspective, you know, it's great, yep, bring these people, go here, go there, but we also know that those particular areas are also under stress. So from your perspective, you know, what are 3 things that I guess not even parents, because even parents are struggling, but adults, what is it that we as adults can do? 3 simple things just to help bring us down below the red line, to help our young people.
So 1 for adults. So these 3 things for adults, but they'll also go for kids as well. 1, self-care. So take care of yourselves psychologically, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever you need to do. You cannot give from an empty bucket. So you need to be taking care of yourself. And people think, oh, and particularly women, and I have been guilty of this myself. I'll put everybody in front of me. Right now, you've got to care for yourself. So make sure you know whether it is I know if I'm hungry and angry and tired, it's pretty hideous. And I'm never good for anybody. So know what can I do to take care of myself? Because you'll also then be modeling that for your children. So self-care is the priority number 1, and get access to the things you need. However, as you said, Andrea, there is a supply and demand issue. So if you don't have access, write stuff down, reach out and call somebody. If you need, the next one is reach out to a support network. So first one is self-care. Second one is if you need it, reach out to a support network, even if it is Lifeline Counselling on the phone, Beyond Blue. There are 24-hour help services as well. I don't know if this goes rural and regionally, but there is a regional and rural support services that have just been opened up or that are opening up now around being online counselling. Don't be afraid to reach out. I've reached out to people and said, look, hey, at the moment I'm struggling. This past year has been up and down all over the place for business and different things. So I've had to be willing to say and be vulnerable. So ask that one. And the next one is sit with it. Don't sit with it if you're going to ruminate and then get so depressed and you won't be able to get out of that hole. But it's not going, be willing to go, you know what, it is difficult, but I know I can get through it. With the help I'm seeking from my support network and the self-care I'm taking, I know I'm going to get through it. Sit with your kids and talk to them about it. So when I say sit with it, I mean talk to them about what's going on, because they will, in an age-appropriate way, of course, they will feel what is happening in the house anyway. So they'll understand what's going on. They won't understand it possibly cognitively, but they'll understand that something's going on. So you've got to be really upfront and honest and sit with them and say, yeah, it has been a struggle, but we are going to get through this. We're going to get through it as a team together. And this is what I'm doing. And normalizing, you know what, I've picked up the phone and talked to somebody. I'm talking to a psychologist or I'm talking to a counselor. Just like we go to the doctor for our physical health, we do that for our mental health.
Yep.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I guess it's about the parents not just like leading the way as well. So there's 3 good ways to do that. I've got a question for you. You mentioned earlier, you said like the naysayer that sits on the shoulder. I describe it as a drunken monkey.
I like that, drunken monkey.
And it's amplified by phones now, and the model, there's good and bad with everything. There's an opportunity of good and bad in everything. And social, there's some good sides to it, but there's also can be some negative sides. How the hell do we keep phones out of young people's hands? Because, like, to me, a mobile phone is like a window into an adult party.
Yeah.
Like, and that adult party can be a really supportive and it can be a greatly well-run party, but if you click the wrong buttons on the phone, you can end up in the worst of humanity so easily and effortlessly with a mobile phone.
E.g. TikTok and what happened 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. So what's your recommendation on phones and how do you manage all that? Yeah.
is one of the really big things. So I have this rule, and I had this when Mitchell was growing up. So he's over 20 now, but when Mitchell was growing up, we put these on a table and had them sitting on a table, one at dinner time. Absolutely nobody touched their phone during dinner time, and nobody played with them or looked at them, even if it did ring. No, that's fine. We did that. But also do this and do it at night. So whether it's at 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever it is, put it on a table, and everybody. So it's got to be everybody. It's not just the kids that are doing it, because that's then double standards. But if everybody does this, and it may take some time, because as adults, we've got to put some parameters around the people who want to get in touch with us and say, no, this rule is in our house at 9 o'clock, the device goes there, and you're not going to get in. Like, if you text me, it's not going to happen. The reason I say that, and this is particularly important for teenagers, and I got it off Michael Carr-Gregg. So Michael Carr-Gregg, great child psychologist, child and adolescent psychologist in Melbourne. And we were talking one day, and he said, Carrie, I've done this. My sons think I'm a complete and utter monster. But what it's actually done is transferred the crap from his sons to him. So when his sons go back to school in the morning and they say, well, why weren't you on Snapchat or whatever at 1 o'clock last night? Yeah, you know, my father's a dragon. He makes us put the phones there. So the thing we've got to understand is these phones, if they go, it's like having a computer in the bedroom for kids. If you have a computer in the bedroom, and I don't want to sound alarmist, but if you've got a computer in the bedroom, let me tell you, if there's a pedophile on the screen, they're looking at everything else other than your child to find out where do they go to school, things like that. Right. If you've got a phone in the bedroom, you've one, got a computer in the bedroom, but two, you've also got something that wakes your child up in the middle of the night because they're alerted to the ping, ping, ping.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And when they've done, so a functional MRI is an MRI in the brain when it's work, like when we're getting these indicators, and they put young people into fMRIs and then triggered off the sound of notifications that come on phones. And with those parts of the brain that light up are exactly the parts that are also addicted. So it's addictive behavior, and they want the likes, even though the likes have now been got. They want the social proof. They want all of those things. And that's why keeping it, just really setting the boundaries and not saying you're not going to have it, I'm going to take it off you. No, as a family, these are our rules.
Yeah, right. What's like, so my boys have, I'm on the extreme side of this, so that if the viewers are out there, I don't offend anyone, but my boys have iPads for school, and then I don't let them touch them, at home. Like that, we're basically a iPad free household. But Jack will go, Dad, I've got 1,000 messages in his messages just from his internal group at school, and they're doing school kid stuff, and it's become, the school's relying on it more now because there was some homeschooling and stuff like that. So that's sort of triggered it, and it wasn't nearly like that in the past. And I just kind of go, yeah, but they're messages, they don't really mean anything, and he's fine about it. But I'm going, he's 9. Yeah. Like I like when I used to go away when I was a kid, I'd write a postcard to my 3 or 4 friends, but I'd have to handwrite it. You just didn't have the access that you have now, which is a benefit, but it can also be a curse.
Yeah. And that, again, it's when we were talking about mindfulness, Peter, that's one of the things is switching off from switching off from the computer, making sure you take that time and step away, because that, again, whether it's social comparisonitis, whether it's always being on, and interestingly in the States at the moment, they've actually got, it's gone to court about the psychological stress and pressure that a workplace is placed on somebody, expecting them to answer their emails in the middle of the night or expecting them to answer their phone. So what they're saying is that that's an unrealistic expectation. But the problem is people haven't been good at putting those boundaries in. And as you say, we have to teach our kids, look, it is just messages. You're not, the fear of missing out of somebody saying something important in those messages, and I've got to get back straight away, for teenagers is particularly important. However, we need to help them go, you know what? it's okay to have that, because another research study done in the States with junior high students, so early high school, they actually put their phones in a box and left it at school for a week. For the first, actually, no, it was 2 weeks. For the first 2-3 days, they had withdrawal and they got antsy. For the next 10, they actually had higher levels of well-being and reported levels of happiness, playing games, reading books, doing drawing, those sorts of things. But then when it came time to get them back, they immediately grabbed and saw what they missed. That's the problem, is that it's not going to go away. So we're going to have to teach, again, as I talked to you about before, the intentional activities. How can we help our kids see it as a tool, not as a crutch, and not as something that's attached to our hand all the time?
So set boundaries, block out time, and do it that way. I've got a quick question for you, and then we're going to wrap it up for now. It's been super interesting chat. It would be great if Carrie, to point out us in the right direction, teaching kids the growth mindset, i.e. where to start or resources available. So can we just, in a couple of minutes?
Absolutely, a couple of minutes. Cool, no problem. So Google Carol Dweck. The Big Life Journal is also got a lot of stuff. So the Big Life Journal has a lot of free resources. If they look at, just Google Big Life Journal, and there's a lot of free resources that you actually get an email every week with growth mindset and different things. So Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K's work. There is a whole range of things. Schools should also be used, or more and more schools are talking about it now. But yeah, Google it, but definitely the Big Life Journal, Grow Your Mind also has those sorts of things. But yeah, those two should be a good start.
That's a great start. Hey, now for the listeners on the call, I should have asked you this earlier. How can people get in contact with you and find out more about your products?
More about carriesutton.com. Oh, the book is actually coming out in November 20 on International Children's Day. We're just getting a website sorted for the book at the moment, so it hasn't finally got up. But carriesutton.com. So really easy, just my name with .com on the end.
That's perfect, and we'll get you back on after the book is launched, Andrea. And we'll do another session. But for right now, it's been a super session. Thanks so much for kicking things off.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to hearing about Mitchell.
Yeah, and we're going to jump across to Mitch now. And Mitch, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business, please.
Okay, so I'm Mitchell Yates, and our business is called Spectrum Investment Services. Now we're a financial planning company, but we have a business office in Brisbane, but also here on the Gold Coast. So, I guess I've been doing financial planning now since 2001. Spent a lot of time in the banks and seen a lot of good and bad things there. But currently I'm sort of working here, based out of the Gold Coast office. And I guess the majority of our clients are accumulators, so pre-retirees. And we're also in the process now of transitioning clients across from another business we've just purchased. And a lot of clients there have self-managed super funds. So for us, I guess our focus is really about when we talk to a client, it's just understanding exactly what the goals and objectives are. Because for us, our industry's changed big time. Like in the last 12, 18 months, we've seen a lot of changes, especially from a compliance point of view, regulatory, things we've got to do now, like the time taken to actually do, once we've spoken to a client, like the paperwork we've got to do is just probably, doubled in the last probably 12 months. And that's purely on the fact that we've had, again, all the changes that have been brought via the commission and whoever else. So for us, it's all about making sure that when we give advice to a client now, we have to jump through a lot of hoops to make sure we tick off a lot of boxes. So not only just from a ASIC point of view, but also from our licensee's point of view. The licensee, for anybody who gives advice from a financial planning point of view, you're pretty much told what you can and can't do from a licensee point of view. Now, they are pretty much driven from ASIC. So for us, it's just making sure that whatever we do, we dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure that whatever advice we give, it's in the client's best interest. Like for us, that's our number one rule. If you cannot put a client in a better position, then you just do not do it. So for us, it's been been a very, very interesting 12 months, shall we say. And even moving forward, the next 12 months, because not only just the advice that we give, everyone's circumstances are different. And right about now with COVID, that's just thrown a whole different spanner in the works. So for us, when we sit down and talk to clients, it's all about understanding, currently they're employed, but what happens, if suddenly if they drop their hours, or if they lose their job, I mean, how does that affect them long term? So for us, we've got a lot of things that we sort of have to deal with currently. And so the advice we gave maybe even 6 months ago, we have to change. We're sort of changing with the times. And for us, even moving forward from a financial planning point of view, like we don't have a crystal ball. There's a lot of clients, a lot of businesses out there who just will not bounce back. And that's, they employed a lot of staff. So for us, again, there's a lot of things that we're dealing with, we haven't had to deal with, for probably quite a long time. So it's all about understanding, for each client we speak to, what are your goals and objectives, and how can we best assist you, based on, what we know currently. And again, it's changing every single day. Even a JobKeeper, like that's changing again. So again, what does that mean? So for us, it's interesting times.
It definitely is interesting times when you're saying that. Like one of my main contracts, I was working for a local guy. He had a brilliant business, but was selling ski holidays all over the world, and obviously the resort's shut, and I don't think Australians are traveling anytime soon. And so we still chat sort of once a week, and he's like, "Oh, I can't wait to get you back." But like absolutely, who knows at the moment. So so you work with business clients as well as individuals, is that?
I do, yes.
Yeah. So if I'm an individual, let's say I'm an individual because I am one, and let's say I want to create
almost like a song,
like a rainy day, like a rainy day kind of scenario, because for me, COVID is that kind of rainy day, I guess, that's sort of caught a lot of us on the back foot, and we might have been leveraged, thinking things will just always be the same, and you name it, you're at the cold face of seeing it. Mm-hmm. But for the listeners out there, is there some kind of general guides? I know you mentioned every case is different, but are there some general guides that I should be thinking about so as I can kind of protect myself and still be able to do the thing? You kind of know where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's like while you're working, I mean, it's all about understanding, what sort of lifestyle are you living right about now? I mean, a lot of people, if we're talking about like a rainy day, it's all about, okay, if suddenly I have to stop work for 6 months. Now, there's two ways you can sort of protect, I guess, your lifestyle. One is safe, it's through injury or illness. You potentially may have to rely on, say, income protection. If it's not, and it's say you're made redundant, for example, then okay, well then you need to have what's your backup? And what your backup may be, okay, we look at your cash flow. What have you been doing with your surplus cash? I mean, you may have been paying down your mortgage, which is great. So you may have a redraw facility, or you may have investments, say, outside of super, for example. So it's all about understanding, if something were to happen, how long can I physically last before, I'm in dire straits? So when we sit down and speak to anybody, it's all about understanding, what are your goals and objectives, but also where are you now? What have you got in place? So, for that very scenario, like with COVID now, like people, it's uncertain times. So it's understanding, okay, well, what options do we have? So, and for everybody out there, like again, it's while you're working, you've got the surplus cash flow, but then all of a sudden, if things go wrong, what do you do? Now your family will be, potentially nice up to a certain point. They'll be able to help you out.
That gets boring after a while for everyone.
It does. Absolutely does. But so again, it's understanding, okay, well, what are we going to do? It may be that you then having to rely on one income. That one income, what's that going to do? Is that going to be able to cover all your bills? Is it, are you then going to start going backwards? I mean, it's all about having, you've got to have that sort of backup somewhere, regardless of what it looks like. And again, it's understanding, what can we do when we sit down with someone and say, well, because, say your fridge broke, or something happened, like, if you've got that extra $5,000, sitting there, or if your car, needs major work done. I mean, how are you going to pay for it? So it's all about understanding, you've got, if possible, I mean, there are clients out there that cash flow is very tight. So that, there's very little things we can do, but it may be, okay, even from a lending point of view, it may be that, right about now, we know rates are very, very low. So it's an ideal time, if you can, is to review, while you're still working, is to, review, say, your interest rates. Like instead of paying 3.5%, you might be able to get it for 2.6, 2.7, for example. So that money is saving potentially, we can sort of reallocate that. So things that we can actually do, but it's just understanding, where you're at right now and then, what are the possible options?
Yep. And because I saw something interesting in the States, because the States are going through, everyone's going through troubles, but there was, I can't remember what percentage, but there's a high percentage of people in the States that, have $400, to cover things. And then that's it. That's their cash reserve. Yep. So in my badly asked question a couple of minutes ago, I was kind of going, like, let's just look at cash reserve. Mm-hmm. Should I be aiming to have like 6 months cash? Like what's a decent buffer? So like, I know there's no set rule, but what's some guidelines we should be aiming at potentially? So if the next COVID thing comes along, we don't get caught out as badly as maybe we've been caught out in the past.
Well, I guess the first thing is looking at your expenses now and working out exactly what do you spend per month. So, and that includes everything. That includes your mortgage repayments, your loan repayments. What would what do you spend money on? And for us, I mean, a lot of clients out there who are wasting money. When we sit down and have a talk to them, we look at, okay, where is your money going? So potentially there are areas that we can save the money on. But if we were to say, like, in 6 months on a normal monthly basis, this is how much we spend. Well, effectively, if something were to go sour, then at least if we've got a minimum of, say, 6 months worth of expenses, put aside somewhere, then at least we know we've got that as a starting point. And from there you build. So again, it's understanding, okay, again, if we're saving money on the mortgage, for example, okay, what can we do with that money? Do we sort of try and pay down the debt quicker, or do we look at, okay, maybe let's try and build up our cash reserves elsewhere? So it's all about, at least for 6 months, if you know what you're spending on a normal monthly basis, if we can at least have that sitting somewhere where if something goes wrong, at least you've got that up your sleeve. And it then gives you time during that 6 months to actually try and look at other options.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice. And I guess that kicks in with what Kari was talking about too. Like, that's obviously good. If the listeners out there have 6 months put away, and we understand that things are different, but this is something to work towards in a sense. The next pandemic or next thing that, may or may not happen, we don't know. At least with your stress levels, at least you kind of go, well, it's one less thing to worry about in a sense. But as you say, you can certainly scramble and start doing something else.
Yeah, and it's just that safety net. And that safety net, and like I said, from a stress level, it brings it right down because you've got that there. I mean, and it gives you time to adjust, and look at other options. It may be that, you do something completely different job-wise. It may be that sort of you end up moving into state, but at least for 6 months you've got, that little bit less stress hanging over your head.
Yeah. And obviously there'll be listeners out there at the moment that don't have that luxury. And so I guess that's where the government sort of stepped in with these programs to kind of keep everyone afloat as best as they can. So so you've got the super side of things, you've got the individuals, and you've got the companies. So what should we be doing? We're at now. What should we be doing from now and up until kind of Christmas? And then what's your outlook? I know we've got no crystal ball, but what's the outlook after that? Like,
well, all the information we've been receiving is that there's a lot of uncertainty. Like, there's a lot of unknown at the moment. We just don't know, because there are so many businesses out there that just will not bounce back. There are industries out there that have been hit that hard. Like, again, we just don't know. Like, the long-term effect is huge. And again, it's like, people that have been working in industry and that's all they ever know. Industry's been hit. Like, what else are they going to do? Like, obviously retraining of some description, but for us at the moment, market-wise, like it's like a bit of a yo-yo. So again, and that's for us, indicators out there that again, people there's not enough information other than uncertainty. So and as they say, like, past performance is not indicative of future performance. For any time we do any investing, right about now, it's we try and do the best we can with the information that we've got. Now, for the next 6 months up until Christmas, again, it's about trying to, Christmas, you're always spending money. So it's all about, trying to, I guess, put yourself in a position because, come the new year, hopefully, we're on top of this virus, but at the end of the day, the damage has already been done, financially across the world. So GDP has dropped, and it's just, again, we don't know. It's like, but again, with what the government's doing, stimulus package and stuff like that, at least we're trying to, get the kickstart the economy again. And, hopefully Melbourne will be on top of everything soon, which will certainly, put us in a much better position. But for the next 6 months, it's all about trying to, I guess, tighten the belt and really try and sort of, get on top of all the little things that, that sort of need to be done. Like for us, I guess even reviewing now is a perfect opportunity because it means that, from a super point of view, like, people are invested in or products or platforms that, fees are very, very high. So it's a way of, potentially trying to increase your retirement savings, or even from a estate planning point of view, so many people out there don't have wills, or they haven't reviewed it for so long. And the thing is, like, people don't realise, when certain things happen in your life, your will becomes null and void. So I guess maybe a way of just trying to, with what's happening now, and like you see how it's affecting the elderly, like it's probably a good time just to have a bit of a check, just a health check on everything, just to make sure, because at the end of the day, like, we don't know what's going to happen come, next year, but at least if we've sort of had a look at ourselves and we've looked at, okay, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And try and at least, have an overview of where things are at, then at least we know come next year that, when things improve, we've got a starting point. Because a lot of people just, like wills and stuff, they put it, we'll get to it at some point, but they never do. Investments, I think, oh yeah, that's our super, but, like at the end of the day, yes, it's your super, but you need to take more, more control over what's happening with your super. Like, again, especially now, like, people sort of, are out of work, for example, like, and having to sort of draw down on the super. Like, it's like there are so many things out there with COVID. It's just made life very interesting. So it's really for us, I guess, next 6 months is really trying to, tighten the belt a little bit, but also just, do the little things that you've probably been putting off. So at least they're done. So come next year, you've got a clean slate, and hopefully things have picked up. Because right about now, there's so much uncertainty. And for us, again, we can just go on the information that we see. And right now, there's probably, there's a lot of gloom and doom. But there are some positive signs, like especially with China and stuff like that. Again, like we look at, I guess, it's weird, but one of the ways we look at, how a business is progressing, or at least, I guess, getting back into producing or production, is looking at smog across various countries. So we can see prior COVID, we can see areas whereby heavy industrialised areas where there's a lot of smog. In COVID, all of a sudden that's dried up. And you see now, we're seeing again, there are areas whereby we can see manufacturing starting to pick up again a little bit. So there are positive signs out there, but again, we don't have a crystal ball. Yeah. But I think for the next 6 months, it's just really about just trying to, just tighten the belt a little bit, but just, get the things you haven't been doing for a while. So at least, come next year, you can start on a solid foot.
That's really timely advice. And I'm ticking off the things in my head that I'm pleased I didn't buy last week. Wanted a standing desk forever, and I scoped it all out, and I've been sending emails backwards and forwards. In the back of my mind, I'm going, do I really need a standing desk? And I was talking to Andrew before the call. I went, I saved myself, $600 this last week because I didn't do that. And then every year, like I've got a ski coaching background. Every year we buy, these seasons passes. And this year I just went, you know what? We don't just, like if we go, I'll just pay. Like I'll wait, because that's like, why am I signing up to pay something now that I'm going to use in 6 months' time, as you say? So I'm using it as an opportunity to work on my financial self-discipline, which I've got to say, in the past, I was always overly optimistic. So that drunken monkey that was on, that's my financial advisor, man, that guy would get me into the most amount of trouble, because he was like, yeah, you'll be fine. Just you deserve it. Just whatever, and so it's been really refreshing and great, Mitch, to just reinforce. And I'm sharing my stuff because I might be typical to some of the listeners out there, where I've literally just gone, you know what? Yeah, that would have been me. Thanks, drunken monkey. But right now I'm trying to be a bit more responsible, I guess. And if, and even if we don't go skiing next year, it's not the end of the world, and the snow will fall and we will get there at some stage. And is that kind of the stuff that you're working through with your clients?
Oh, definitely. I mean, again, it's, it's just making sure that where they're at, they're comfortable, and if we need to make changes, we can do that. But it's just, just ticking off all the boxes, and that's really what it's critical, because you do it while you can, do it while, it may, now is an ideal time, to review everything. It's like, because with what's happened and just the impact, if we can save a couple of bucks here and there, that'll make a big difference. And if we can tidy up from, I guess, the estate planning side of things, we'll do that as well. It's like, even for, kids' education and stuff, people were, like, it's not cheap. If you're talking about sort of, private schools, like, it may not be affordable anymore. So it's about saying, okay, what's plan B? It's all about understanding, moving forward, what does it look like? And understanding right now, if we can just at least review where you're at least we have a better guide, such that come next year, then, we can start, hopefully, just the world's a little bit better place, start, preparing a little bit differently. But at the moment, it's just making sure that have a look at what you've got, because, it's really important, if we can, save a couple of bucks here and there, it'll go a long way to make it. And not only that, but also mentally, saying it's like, if you can reduce that stress like that, it's huge. Like the amount of clients that I come across that are, again, mental health issues, like a lot. And again, it's, and to be able to sort of help them in any way, shape or form that I can, and put a couple of bucks back in their pocket, that makes a big difference. The less stress I can put on a client, the better.
It's really good timing, and good timing to bring Kari back into the call. And also, Mitch, so if someone's listening on the call, they go, I wouldn't mind saving a few bucks here and there. And you seem to be, someone who's, passionate about, someone's finances and giving them the best advice. How do the people get in contact with you?
We're at Spectrum Investment Services. So we've got a website. So that's probably the easiest way to track us down, or I'm on LinkedIn, like I guess most business people out there now, but predominantly, so Spectrum Investment Services, that's who we are. And again, office in Brisbane, plus also here on the Gold Coast.
And I'm just going to jump in with a thought, because you mentioned how, people's with their wills and estates, it's one of the things they put off because, and there's some psychology behind this, and I'll share it, because sometimes if you understand the psychology and you go, now I understand why I'm doing or not doing what I'm doing, and it empowers people to move forward. So essentially what happens is our brains are designed to protect us, and they're going to keep us from anything that's really uncomfortable. So if looking, thinking about not being here makes you uncomfortable, which it may or may not, that's one of the reasons why you may not have looked at it. But now at the moment, we've got this whole COVID thing going on. So maybe use the uncomfortableness of COVID to kind of carry you across the line, and just, give Mitch a call or get in contact with Kari if you need some help and support with getting your kids in line. So use that as the driver to tackle those things that had made you more uncomfortable in the past. Because as we said, tying a nice bow around this is, the more you take control of things and the more you've got things in order, your house in order, I guess, and you talked about doing a financial sort of checkup, then the less stress you are, so the happier you are, and that's going to be a big benefit at the moment.
Mitch, we know we've got Christmas literally around the corner. Gosh, where's this year gone, right? It's crazy. Obviously, a lot of people are already beginning to think about this thing called Christmas, which historically is also one of our biggest debt creators ever known to man, is always around Christmas. And obviously we're now coming into this Christmas time, playing with very different parameters. From your perspective, what would be some of the advice you would give to people that are looking at Christmas, realizing that it's not going to be the Christmas that we're used to? But what would be your advice in regards from a financial management, financial security perspective?
Well, one of the things we have seen is that people are putting less money on the credit cards at the moment. So people are actually being more mindful of long-term, just the implications of having that debt hanging over the head. So what we have seen is with COVID that people are realising that, finances are tight now. So, we don't need to put it on the credit card. So it's effectively, for a lot of people out there, if you're going to put debt on a credit card, make sure that, look at, when can you pay that off? So, and think about, okay, what is our limit? Because I know Christmas is not cheap. It never is, never will be. But it's understanding, okay, well, if this is what we're going to be doing, even look at sort of, putting like maybe a monthly budget between now and Christmas. Look, okay, well, what would it normally cost us as far as Christmas goes? So let's look at, okay, instead of spending $1,000, we may only have to be, we could only probably afford $500 this year. So it's about just trying to make sure, okay, let's just do it, instead of doing it all one hit, let's do it in stages, bit by bit. Because I mean, obviously, if we can sort of, try and limit the damage that's done at Christmas time, then that's a big step forward. So it means, again, tightening the belt a little bit and looking, okay, what's really important and what are the things that we can probably, cut out if we have to. It's all about making sure, okay, just let's set a budget and let's stick to that budget. If we can do that, then that'll go a long way to sort of making sure that Christmas is not as, as tough as it, probably will be. So
I guess, one of the greatest stresses for people through this whole COVID situation has been that financial stress.
Yep.
And I guess really what COVID has, just from a personal perspective, what COVID highlighted for me was we live in a debt society.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching a couple of programs. I can't remember their names. I'm frantically sitting here going, what are those programs we watched? And one of the comments that was made that has sat with me for the last few months, and that is, he who owns the debt controls the person. And that completely scared me to smithereens. And so I guess that the key here is that we are so used to having this love-hate relationship with debt. What would be your recommendations with people who are sort of really struggling with that whole debt mentality? And I mean, what's even more frightening on the flip side is you're seeing a lot of an increase in advertising. I'm a marketer. I see it all the time. An increase in advertising around, come and get debt. It's we've got it going cheap. Come and get, we can save you cheap. It's a cheap debt recovery for you. And obviously some people knowing that stresses, the financial stress there is quite prevalent. We know that, a lot of people are losing their jobs or reducing significantly the amount of income. JobKeeper, we know, is going through its next round of amendments. So what would be your advice to those particular people who are looking there, watching TV or listening to the ads and seeing that they can get debt cheap, in inverted commas?
Like those buy more products for interest, 18 months interest free or 24 months interest free and all that sort of stuff as well. Yeah.
If you're looking at those sort of things, I mean, again, it's okay. Well, if we're going to put this, debt or, put something on a credit card, what is our timeline? Set yourself a timeline to pay it off. In other words, it may be that you're putting $1,000 or $1,500, but you say you're looking at like interest-free period. Well, make sure that whatever the interest-free period is, it's paid off by the end of that interest-free period. So otherwise, you're getting a whole lot of, whole world of hurt. And it's all about, I guess, control. Control is the hardest thing. For people out there, it's like, oh, yeah, we'll just stick it on a credit card. We'll be right. We'll pay it off. At the end of the day, people can't and people don't because they just don't have the control to be able to sort of, stick to a plan to be able to get rid of it. And all they do is it's like debt upon debt upon debt. So it's all about, I guess you've got to go sit down and say, okay, if we're going to do this, let's stick to a plan, a game plan, like a time frame to actually pay it off. If you can do that, then it's not so bad. But, for a lot of people, especially like you're saying, Andrew, young people today, debt society, it's just like one credit card after another. But at the end of the day, it all adds up. And it's all about making sure, it's trying to take control. And if you can sort of, say, okay, if we're going to do this, 6 months, whatever the time frame is for the interest-free period, it has to be paid off. So again, look at your budget, look at your cash flow, saying, okay, well, we want to pay this off in, say, 6 months. So we know we've got to set aside X amount of dollars and you can't touch it. Yeah. And it goes from an account where you cannot touch. So come the end of 6 months or whatever it is, bang, you can transfer the funds across. And for a lot of people, that's the hard part. But if you can do it like that, that's that'll certainly go a long way to making, again, Christmas a lot more interesting.
A lot more bearable.
Yeah, a lot more bearable.
It's a really good point. And Mitch, you also, like, if you can set it up where it's automated as well, like that's something that works really well. Carrie, it's an opportunity to bring you in as well as we look to wrap up another brilliant episode of
I guess
Bytes.
one of the things I would say is I would support wholeheartedly what Mitch has said, because if as adults we can model that, children will learn those skills too. And that helps shape future generations. If we can rein in the spending or whatever we need to do to manage our money, because again, when children are little, between 0 to 12, they live with us and see how we manage our money or how we go about things. So what Mitch has said is just such gold, and particularly at the moment, because we do need to look at what's coming. How can we make sure that we are putting aside for what we need? It's just been gold. So I really appreciate it. I've been taking notes as well and doing different things, and especially because just around the will and those sorts of things, I haven't done that in the past 5 to 6 years. I know I need to be doing that.
Yep, and the thing is, like I also, I deal with a lot of blended families as well. So there's a lot of things out there, like with your will, like understanding, okay, if something happens to either one of us, what does that look like? We've got, multiple kids, multiple ex-partners. It's like, it's just making sure that you tie off all the loose ends and you get it so that when something happens, at least the money's going to go to the right person at the right time. And it's critical to get that happening, because there's so many people out there, when family and money just don't go hand in hand. And it's like, you'll be surprised how many people stick their hand up thinking they're owed something at the end of the day when they're not. But that's what people do. Like even people that have, say, looked after your dogs, for example, your next door neighbours, they think they're entitled to something. It's just crazy. So it's all about making sure that if you're going to do it right.
And I think I'm going to see an ebook here. I'm going to see an ebook coming through, Mitch.
The other thing is the stress and anxiety, and Mitch hit it on the head. Money would be one of the most stressful and anxiety producing things. And when parents are feeling that, I could guarantee you, and I've seen it in the past 6 months, when the craps hit the fan, the children also suffer, because there's tension at home, there's fighting, you can cut the air with a knife. So critically important. Thank you.
Fantastic, Pete. Wow.
Yep. Fantastic show.
As always.
Yeah. Thanks once again to our expert panelists, Carrie and Mitch. We're right on track, and it's always good to just even reinforce. Like sometimes these things and then you forget about them, and then it's great to get them reinforced. For my thing, it's about making sure that Drunken Monkey doesn't have my credit card. And when I say drunken, I don't mean I'm drunk when I'm spending. It just babbles along and gives me great advice that I don't necessarily need to take. So that's been fantastic. And then Carrie with the kids it's been sensational as well, because it's not just, if we can learn the skills that help the kids, we can also learn the skills to help ourselves. So there's a double mission there. And guys, if we can help any further in getting the message out with you in future episodes, we'll be sure to check back in and we'll go from there.
Awesome.
Well done, Pete. Well, look, I think another fantastic show, as you've mentioned. A lot of great learnings, a lot of great lessons. Next week, we have another action-packed couple of interviewees, which I think is going to once again just throw the roof off us and give us some more new perspective on life.
Yeah, it's so great to check in with such experts. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise, and we'll see you all again next week.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Andrea.
You're welcome. Take care, team.
Thanks,